The massive chamber of the Galactic Council's meeting hall fell silent as Admiral James Walker stepped forward. His polished boots clicked against the metallic floor, echoing through the vast space. Around him, towering representatives of various alien species looked down from their elevated platforms, their expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Presenting the diplomatic fleet of Earth, announced the Council's herald, his voice booming through the chamber. Led by Admiral James Walker of the Human Space Command. The holographic display in the center of the chamber activated, showing 5 sleek vessels hanging in the darkness of space. Each ship bore the distinctive blue and silver colors of Earth's fleet, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars. A rumble of laughter started from the Strongarm Empire's section. Ambassador Krell, a massive figure with armor-plated skin, leaned forward on his platform. "These are your ships?" he asked, his translator barely keeping up with his booming voice. "These toys." Walker maintained his composure, standing straight in his dark blue uniform. At 55 years old, he had seen enough to know when someone was underestimating him. "Yes, Ambassador. These are 5 of our finest vessels, including our flagship, the HMS Delegate." More laughter echoed through the chamber. The Strongarm delegation didn't even try to hide their amusement. Behind them, their own ship could be seen through the chamber's transparent walls, a behemoth that stretched for kilometers, casting a shadow over the nearby space station. "The HMS Delegate is barely larger than our personal transport vessels," another council member noted, this one from the Trade Federation. "Surely this cannot be representative of your actual military capabilities." Walker allowed himself a small smile. "I assure you, these ships represent the standard size for our fleet. We find them quite adequate for our needs." Ambassador Krell stood up, his massive frame towering over his platform. "The Strongarm Empire's smallest destroyer is 20 times the size of your largest vessel. How do you expect to be taken seriously in galactic matters with such limited capabilities?" The Admiral stepped closer to the holographic display, his reflection mixing with the images of his ships. "Size isn't everything, Ambassador. Humanity has always believed in efficiency over excess." "Efficiency." Krell spat the word out. "Your entire fleet could fit in one of our cargo bays. The Strongarm Empire has ruled the outer sectors for 3 centuries because we understand true power. These toys of yours would barely scratch the paint on our warships." Walker noted the reactions around the chamber. Most species seemed to share the Strongarm Empire's dismissive attitude. But a few, particularly the more technologically advanced races, were studying the human ships with careful attention. "We appreciate your perspective," Walker replied diplomatically. "Earth looks forward to peaceful relations with all council members, regardless of our differences in ship design philosophy." The council's first speaker, an ancient being from one of the founding races, raised a hand for silence. "We welcome humanity to the galactic community," they announced. "Though your technological level seems modest, we are willing to grant you observer status within the council." "Observer status?" Krell laughed again. "Yes, that seems appropriate for such a minor species. Perhaps in a few centuries, they'll learn how to build proper ships." Walker bowed slightly, his expression neutral. "Thank you for your consideration. Earth accepts observer status." He paused, then added, "Though I hope you'll remember that appearances can be deceiving." As the Admiral turned to leave, his aide, Lieutenant Tom Harris, fell into step beside him. "They're underestimating us, sir," Harris whispered, his young face showing concern. Walker waited until they were in the privacy of their transport before responding. "Yes, they are," he said, a glint in his eye. "And that's exactly what we wanted." He pulled out his secure tablet, reviewing the sensor data their ships had been quietly gathering throughout the meeting. "Send this back to command," he ordered. "The Council's ships are exactly what our simulations predicted, oversized, over-engineered, and vulnerable to exactly the kind of warfare we've spent the last 50 years perfecting." "Do you think they'll figure it out?" Harris asked. Walker looked out the viewport at the massive ships surrounding them. Eventually, he said, but by then, it might be too late for them to do anything about it. The transport detached from the station, making its way back to the HMS Delegate. From the outside, the human vessel looked tiny and insignificant compared to the gigantic ships around it. But inside its efficiently designed hull, systems that would revolutionize warfare hummed quietly, waiting for their time. Captain Robert Stone stood on the bridge of the HMS Swift, his eyes fixed on the massive Strongarm Empire warship that had just appeared at the edge of the colony's sensor range. It was the third such accidental border crossing this week. "Another diplomatic incident, sir?" asked First Officer Lisa Green, her voice tight with controlled anger. "Oh, they'll claim they got lost again," Stone replied, running a hand through his graying hair. "Somehow their mighty empire keeps losing track of where our borders are." The Swift was one of humanity's newest patrol vessels, barely 300 meters long. Next to the Strongarm ship, which stretched over 6 kilometers from bow to stern, it looked like a minnow swimming next to a whale. "They're launching fighters," reported the sensor officer. "Standard intimidation pattern." Stone nodded, watching as the huge alien fighters, each one nearly the size of the Swift itself, began their show of force. The Strongarm Empire loved to remind everyone of their power, especially the tiny human ships they found so amusing. "Hold position," Stone ordered. "Continue recording everything. And make sure our new sensor package is getting good readings of their ship." The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations. Though the Swift looked small and fragile, its systems were anything but. Hidden beneath its humble exterior, experimental quantum sensors mapped every detail of the Strongarm vessel. "Sir," Green said quietly, "that's the third patrol they've sent this close to New Eden Colony. The civilians are getting nervous." Stone understood their fear. New Eden was one of humanity's most distant colonies, and the sight of those enormous warships would frighten anyone who didn't know better. His comm unit beeped. "Captain Stone," a gravelly voice said, "this is Commander Gruv of the Strongarm Empire. We seem to have encountered a navigation error. Again." The alien's tone carried clear amusement. "Commander," Stone replied politely, "you've strayed 15 light minutes into human space. Again. Would you like us to transmit proper navigational data? I'm sure the Galactic Council would be interested in helping prevent such frequent errors." A harsh laugh came through the speakers. "Such concern from such a small vessel. Fear not, little human. We will correct our course. Eventually." The massive warship's fighters made another pass around the Swift, close enough to make the smaller ship's hull vibrate from their engine wash. "They're not even trying to hide it anymore," Green muttered. "No," Stone agreed. "They're not." He opened a secure channel to Earth Command, transmitting the latest sensor data. "But they're giving us exactly what we need." Later that day, in his private quarters, Stone reviewed the reports from other patrol ships. The Strongarm Empire was pushing harder every week, testing human responses, looking for signs of weakness. They weren't the only ones. Other council races had begun probing human space as well, though none as boldly as the Strongarm. His computer chimed with an incoming message from Admiral Walker. "Captain," the Admiral's face was grim. "How many incursions this week?" 7 confirmed, sir. All with the same pattern. They cross the border, launch fighters, make a show of force, then leave while making excuses." Walker nodded. "They're getting bolder." The Council ignored our latest diplomatic protest. The Strongarm representative actually laughed during the session. "Are we going to respond, sir?" "Not yet." Walker's expression hardened. "Keep gathering data. Let them think their size makes them invincible. Command is accelerating production at the hidden shipyards. When the time comes," he paused, allowing himself a small smile, "they'll learn why humanity chose to build small." Stone looked out his viewport at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Strongarm Empire's massive ships were plotting their next move, confident in their superior size and strength. They saw humanity's smaller ships as a sign of weakness, never suspecting that every encounter was giving Earth's engineers more data, more insights, more advantages. "They think they're intimidating us," Stone said quietly, "but they're really just teaching us how to beat them." The HMS Swift continued its patrol, a seemingly insignificant vessel guarding human space. To anyone watching, it looked helpless against the giant ships that kept testing its borders. But appearances, as humanity had learned long ago, could be deceiving. Red alert klaxons blared through the corridors of the HMS Thunder as Captain Mary Wells ran onto the bridge. The destroyer's crew worked with practiced efficiency, their movements quick but controlled. "Status report," Wells commanded, dropping into her chair. "3 strong-armed dreadnoughts just jumped into the system, Captain," her tactical officer reported. "They're heading straight for Haven Colony." No response to our hails. Wells studied the tactical display. Haven was home to 50,000 civilians, mostly farmers and researchers. Its only protection was the Thunder, a ship the Strongarm Empire had dismissed as barely larger than a shuttle. "They're launching dropships," the sensor officer announced. "Looks like a full invasion force." Wells' jaw tightened. After months of provocations, the Strongarm Empire had finally shown their true intentions. "Send an emergency signal to Fleet Command. Haven Colony is under attack." The massive enemy ships filled the view screen, their hull plates decorated with the savage imagery of past conquests. Each one was at least 30 times larger than the Thunder. "Ma'am," her communications officer turned, face pale. "They're broadcasting a message to the colony." "Put it through." Commander Grubb's familiar voice boomed through the bridge. "Attention, insignificant human settlement. Your pathetic excuse for a warship cannot protect you. Surrender now, and we may allow you to serve as slaves rather than examples." Wells stood up, her voice steady as she addressed her crew. "They think our size makes us weak. It's time to show them why they're wrong." Battle stations. The Thunder's engines hummed to life, its revolutionary drive system allowing it to accelerate at speeds that would crush any strong-armed ship. Wells had trained her crew for exactly this scenario. "Launch our defensive drones," she ordered. "Begin colonial evacuation procedures, and power up the main weapons." The strong-armed ships launched their first wave of fighters, each one massive and heavily armed. They moved in a rigid formation, clearly expecting the tiny human vessel to flee or surrender. Instead, the Thunder shot forward at impossible speeds, its advanced inertial dampeners allowing maneuvers that would tear apart a larger ship. The enemy fighters tried to track it, but their targeting systems couldn't keep up with its rapid course changes. "They're firing," the tactical officer reported. Massive energy beams lanced out from the dreadnoughts, but the Thunder was already gone, its small size and incredible speed making it nearly impossible to hit. Wells watched with grim satisfaction as the enemy's frustration showed in their increasingly erratic firing patterns. "Colonial evacuation ships are launching," reported her XO. "Estimated 15 minutes to get everyone clear." "Then we give them 15 minutes, Wells said. "Show them what this tiny ship can do." The Thunder darted between the massive enemy vessels, its advanced weapons targeting vulnerable points that human sensors had identified during months of surveillance. Each shot was precisely calculated, striking shield generators and weapon emplacements with surgical accuracy. "Impossible," Grubb's voice thundered over the comm. "How dare you resist? We will crush your insignificant vessel." But the Thunder was already moving again, its quantum-compressed armor shrugging off hits that did land while its point defense systems swatted enemy fighters from space with terrifying precision. "Colony ships are clear," the XO reported after what felt like hours but had only been minutes. "All civilians evacuated." Wells nodded, watching as one of the strong-armed dreadnoughts began venting atmosphere from multiple hull breaches. "Send a message to Commander Grubb." She stood tall, despite the bridge shaking from a near miss. "This is Captain Wells of the HMS Thunder. Our colonists are safe. Your ships are damaged. And now you know." Size isn't everything. This means war. Grub roared. The Strongarm Empire will destroy your entire species for this insult. No, Wells replied calmly. This means you finally get to see what humanity's tiny ships can really do. As the Thunder jumped to light speed, escorting the civilian ships to safety, the Strongarm commander watched in fury as his mighty dreadnoughts limped away, defeated by a ship they had dismissed as insignificant. In the following hours, the Strongarm Empire would declare total war on humanity. But as reports of the battle spread through the Galactic Council, some began to wonder if perhaps they had catastrophically underestimated these humans and their small but deadly vessels. Dr. Thomas Reed walked through the underground shipyard, his footsteps echoing off the reinforced walls. Above him, a new destroyer took shape, its hull barely visible through the scaffolding. At just 200 meters long, it looked tiny compared to the enemy ships it would soon face. Another small one, Doc. The voice belonged to Jack Wilson, one of the yard's senior engineers, even after the Strongarm Empire declared war. Reed smiled, running his hand along a section of the quantum-compressed hull plating. Especially after they declared war. Come with me. There's something you should see. They entered Reed's laboratory, where holographic displays showed ships of various sizes. In the center, a simulation played out, a massive Strongarm dreadnought trying to track a much smaller human vessel. Look here, Reed pointed to the energy readings. Their ships are 30 times larger than ours, but their power output is only 5 times greater. Why? Because energy efficiency decreases exponentially with size. Wilson watched as the simulation continued. But their ships carry more weapons, more armor. More isn't always better. Reed brought up a cross-section of a human destroyer. See our artificial gravity system. It's perfectly scaled to our ship's mass. The energy cost to maintain it is minimal. But they're massive ships. They waste almost 40% of their power just keeping their crews from floating away. The display shifted to show engine configurations. Their huge engines look impressive, but they're fighting physics. To move those enormous masses, they'd need tremendous power. Our ships. Reed grinned. We can go from full stop to combat speed in seconds, using a fraction of the energy. But what about armor? Wilson asked. Their ships have layers upon layers of it. Reed's eyes lit up. He walked to a nearby table and picked up what looked like a small metal plate. Traditional armor relies on thickness. More layers equal better protection, right? But we took a different approach. He placed the plate in a testing chamber. A massive energy beam struck it, but instead of melting through, the beam dissipated harmlessly. Quantum compressed armor, Reed explained. By compressing matter at the quantum level, we created armor that's thin enough for our small ships, but stronger than anything the Strongarm Empire has. They keep adding layers of traditional armor, making their ships bigger and slower. We went the other way, making our protection better, not bigger. The holographic display changed again, showing the human ship's power core. But here's the real secret, Reed said softly. Our microfusion reactors. Everyone else builds bigger reactors for more power. We learned how to make them smaller and more efficient. Wilson studied the design. Is that why their shots barely scratch our ships? Because we have more power for shields. Exactly. Their huge reactors waste energy just containing their own reactions. Ours. Reed brought up the efficiency comparisons. 98% efficiency in a package small enough to fit in this room. We can route almost all that power to engines, weapons, or shields as needed. The display showed a battle simulation based on recent encounters. The tiny human ship danced around its larger opponent, its weapons striking with precision, while enemy fire passed harmlessly through the space where it had been moments before. Speed, Reed said, watching the simulation. Maneuverability. Efficiency. Everything in the universe has an optimal size. The Strongarm Empire thinks bigger is always better, but they're wrong. We found the perfect balance, just large enough to carry what we need, small enough to use it effectively. A warning light flashed on Reed's console. Another attack? Wilson asked. Yes, Reed nodded, checking the data. They're pushing harder now, trying to overwhelm us with size and numbers. But they still don't understand. He looked up at the partially completed destroyer above them. Every battle teaches them the same lesson. In space combat, efficiency beats excess, quality beats quantity, and small, fast, and smart beats big, slow, and wasteful. Wilson watched as more engineers rushed to their stations, preparing to accelerate production. How long until they figure it out? They're starting to, Reed said, turning back to his work. But by then, we'll have something even better. Because that's the other advantage of building small. We can adapt faster than they can. While they're still building one massive ship, we can build and improve a dozen of ours. The shipyard hummed with activity as humanity prepared for war, its tiny ships carrying technology that would change the face of space combat forever. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the HMS Delegate, watching as the largest strong-arm fleet ever assembled emerged from hyperspace. 50 massive dreadnoughts, each one bigger than a small city, filled the viewport. Behind them came hundreds of support ships and thousands of fighters. They certainly want to make a point. First Officer Harris commented, his face illuminated by the tactical display. Send the signal, Walker ordered. It's time to show them what humanity's fleet can really do. From behind the moon of a nearby gas giant, 30 human ships appeared. To the strong-arm fleet, they must have looked like toys. The entire human formation could have fit inside one of their massive dreadnoughts. Enemy commander is hailing us, the communications officer reported. Supreme Commander Krell's face appeared on the main screen, his armor-plated features twisted in a sneer. Admiral Walker, surrender now, and we may spare some of your people as servants. Walker smiled slightly. You know, Commander, you really should have paid more attention when we first met. Enough, Krell roared. Your tiny ships are nothing compared to our might. We will crush you all at once, and the galaxy will learn what happens to those who defy the Strongarm Empire. The transmission cut off. Walker turned to his crew. Battle Formation Delta. Let's show them what these tiny ships can do. The human fleet split into 5 groups of 6 ships each, moving with a speed and precision that made the massive Strongarm vessels look sluggish in comparison. As the enemy fleet opened fire, the human ships accelerated to speeds that their opponents had thought impossible. First wave of fighters incoming, Harris reported. Initiate point defense response, Walker ordered calmly. The space around the human ships lit up as their advanced targeting systems went to work. Enemy fighters exploded by the dozens, their large size making them easy targets for the humans' precision weapons. They're launching their second wave, Tactical reported. 3,000 fighters incoming. Walker nodded. Execute maneuver pattern Wolfpack. The human ships regrouped into their smaller formations, each group targeting a single enemy dreadnought. The Strongarm vessels fired their massive weapons, but the human ships were too fast, too agile. Their smaller size, combined with their advanced drives, let them dodge most hits easily. Then the human ships opened fire. Concentrated beams of energy, powered by their efficient reactors, struck the enemy vessels at precise points. Shields failed, armor buckled, and one of the mighty dreadnoughts erupted in a series of explosions. Impossible. Krell's voice boomed over the general channel. All ships, focus fire. They cannot evade forever. But the human vessels were already moving again, their wolf-pack formations striking and disappearing before the huge enemy ships could bring their main weapons to bear. 3 more dreadnoughts fell in quick succession. Sir, Harris called out, they're trying to surround us. Just as we planned, Walker replied. Signal all ships, initiate Operation Firefly. The human fleet scattered, each ship now moving independently. To the Strongarm gunners, it must have looked like chaos. But every movement was precisely calculated. The small human ships darted between the massive enemy vessels, causing them to hit each other with their own fire as they tried to track their elusive targets. Strongarm ships collided trying to maneuver in formation, their size working against them in a crowded battlefield. Enemy flagship is powering up their main gun, Tactical reported. Right on schedule, Walker said. All ships execute final phase. 6 human destroyers converged on Krell's massive flagship, moving so fast their images blurred on the tactical display. The flagship's giant weapon fired and hit nothing but empty space as the human ships danced around the beam, their smaller size allowing them to change direction instantly. Then the destroyers fired as one, their concentrated attack cutting through the flagship's defenses like they weren't even there. Signal from the enemy fleet, communications reported. They're retreating. Walker watched as the remaining Strongarm ships turned and fled, leaving their burning flagship behind. In less than an hour, humanity's tiny fleet had defeated the largest armada the Strongarm Empire had ever assembled. Send word to Earth, Walker ordered. The first battle is won. And now everyone knows, size isn't everything. As the human fleet regrouped, news of their victory spread across the galaxy. The mighty Strongarm Empire had been defeated by ships they had once mocked, and nothing would ever be the same again. The Galactic Council chamber was silent as the battle footage played on the main display. Gone were the laughs and sneers that had greeted humanity's first appearance. Instead, wide eyes and worried whispers filled the room as they watched the tiny human ships tear through the mighty Strongarm fleet. Professor Vax, the Council's chief military analyst, stood before the assembly. As you can see, he said, pointing to the holographic display, human vessels demonstrate capabilities that defy our traditional understanding of ship design. The footage showed a human destroyer effortlessly evading fire from 3 Strongarm dreadnoughts, then turning impossibly fast to deliver a precise strike that disabled all 3. Their power-to-mass ratio is unlike anything we've ever seen, Vax continued. While our ships grow larger to accommodate more power systems, humans have somehow created powerful reactors that fit in vessels a fraction of our size. Ambassador Krell was notably absent, but other Strongarm representatives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their empire had lost 28 capital ships in the past week alone, each one worth more than an entire human battle group in terms of raw materials. Most concerning, Vax said, bringing up new diagrams, is their armor technology. Our largest weapons barely scratch their smallest ships. Yet their weapons cut through our best defenses like they aren't even there. The Trade Federation's representative stood up. How is this possible? We've built larger ships for generations. Every calculation shows that bigger vessels should be more powerful. That was our mistake, a new voice said. All heads turned as Dr. Reed from Earth walked into the chamber. The council had requested human testimony, but many were still uncomfortable with how quickly their perception of humanity had changed. Reed approached the display, nodding to Vax. May I? The professor stepped aside, and Reed brought up a simple diagram. You build bigger ships because you think they're better. But in doing so, you waste enormous amounts of energy just moving your own mass. It's like trying to win a race by carrying a heavy weight. He showed footage of a recent battle. Your ships are so big that they can't dodge incoming fire. So you add more armor, making them even bigger and slower. It's a cycle that works against you. But our weapons, a Strongarm officer protested, are impressive, Reed acknowledged. But they take so long to aim that they never hit our ships. All that power means nothing if you can't use it effectively. The display shifted to show a human vessel's internal layout. We designed our ships to be exactly as large as they need to be. No bigger, no smaller. Every system is optimized for its purpose. While your ships waste energy fighting their own size, ours use almost every bit of power for weapons, shields, and movement. Murmurs filled the chamber as more battle footage played. A formation of human ships danced through a Strongarm blockade, their precise movements making the larger ships look clumsy and obsolete. But surely larger ships can carry more fighters, more weapons. Another representative began. More isn't always better, Reed replied. Your fighters are so big that our point defense systems can target them easily. Your weapons are powerful, but they're too slow to hit us. You've been building bigger ships for so long that you forgot to ask if you should. The council's first speaker leaned forward. Are you saying that our entire approach to space warfare is wrong? I'm saying it could be better, Reed answered diplomatically. Already, some of your engineers are starting to understand. The Trade Federation's newest ships are 30% smaller than their previous designs. They're beginning to see what we learned long ago. Efficiency beats excess. As if to emphasize his point, an urgent message appeared on the main display. Another strong-arm fleet had engaged human forces. The battle was already over, with the human ships emerging victorious without a single loss. The tide of war has turned, Reed concluded, not because our ships are better armed or better armored, but because they're better designed. We didn't build tiny ships because we had to. We built them this way because it's the best way. As the council session ended, representatives hurried to contact their governments. The age of massive warships was over. Humanity's tiny fleet had changed space warfare forever, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Strongarm Empire's home system was filled with massive ships. Hundreds of dreadnoughts formed a defensive wall around their capital planet, while thousands of fighters patrolled the space between them. It was the largest concentration of military might the galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Walker stood on the bridge of the HNS Delegate, studying the enemy formation. The entire human fleet, 50 ships that could have fit inside a single enemy dreadnought, waited silently behind a nearby gas giant. They've committed everything they have, Harris noted, looking at the tactical display. Over 300 capital ships. Walker nodded. And they're still thinking like their ships are superior. He opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, prepare for Operation Checkmate. On the main screen, Supreme Commander Krell's face appeared. He looked haggard, his armor-plated skin dull from stress. So you've finally come to die, Admiral. Your luck ends today. No fleet can break through our defense. You still don't understand, do you? Walker replied calmly. Size isn't strength. Your massive ships are just massive targets. Krell roared in fury. All ships, attack. Crush these human vermin. The space between the fleets lit up with energy weapons as the battle began. But this time, the human ships moved differently. Instead of their usual wolf pack formations, they split into pairs, each duo moving in perfect synchronization. Execute maneuver pattern sword dance, Walker commanded. The human ships accelerated to what seemed like impossible speeds. They wove between enemy vessels, their paired formations allowing them to create crossfire zones that caught the larger ships in devastating traps. Their targeting systems can't track us at this speed, Tactical reported with satisfaction. Enemy fire is hitting their own ships. Walker watched as the elegant dance of destruction unfolded. The huge enemy ships, packed too closely together, couldn't maneuver without risking collisions. Their massive weapons were useless against targets that moved too quickly to track. Status report, Walker called out as the first wave of attacks ended. 47 enemy capital ships destroyed, Harris reported. No casualties on our side. Their fighters are in disarray. They can't coordinate at these speeds. Krell's voice boomed over the command channel again. Impossible. Our ships are superior. They're bigger, stronger. And that's why you've already lost, Walker replied. You've never understood that bigger isn't better. Strength isn't about size. It's about how effectively you use what you have. The battle continued, but it was already over. The human ships moved like dancers through a deadly ballet, their precise attacks dismantling the enemy fleet piece by piece. Advanced targeting systems picked off fighters by the hundreds while the paired destroyers methodically eliminated capital ships. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, Tactical announced. They're trying to scatter. Too late, Walker said quietly. All ships, execute final phase. The human fleet regrouped into a single formation, their ships arranging themselves into a perfect arrow shape. As one, they accelerated toward the enemy flagship, their combined weapons fire cutting a path through any resistance. Krell's massive flagship tried to turn away, but its huge bulk made it far too slow. The human ship swarmed around it like piranhas, their concentrated fire overwhelming its defenses in seconds. Signal from the enemy flagship, communications reported. They're surrendering. Walker nodded. Accept their surrender. Signal all ships to cease fire. As the human fleet secured their victory, Walker looked out at the battlefield. The mighty Strongarm Empire, which had ruled through size and intimidation for centuries, had been defeated by ships they once mocked as toys. 1 month later, in the Galactic Council chamber, the peace treaty was signed. The Strongarm Empire formally surrendered, and humanity's position in the galaxy was forever changed. The age of wasteful excess is over, Walker announced to the Council. We've shown that innovation beats intimidation, that efficiency defeats excess, and that skill matters more than size. As if to emphasize his point, a new ship design appeared on the main display. A joint project between human engineers and other Council races. It was smaller than traditional vessels, but incorporated all the lessons learned from the war. The future of space travel isn't about building bigger ships, Walker concluded. It's about building better ones. The chamber erupted in applause as representatives from across the galaxy rose to their feet. The war was over, and a new era had begun. One where the size of your ships mattered far less than the intelligence used to design them.